Well, we made it. Okay, so welcome to episode 14 of Story Mode. Today we're going to be talking about ABZU. You know, we've been doing this for over a year now. It's still just blowing my mind. I'm not used to this. I'm not
Wow.
okay with this. So yeah, welcome to episode 14 of Story Mode. And as always, if you have not played ABZU, if you know nothing about ABZU, you might want to close the stream unless you're okay with spoilers, because this is a spoiler show. We're going to sit down and we're going to talk about anything and everything ABZU, from the story to just what we think about it in general. So welcome to everybody who's tuning in, and if you're watching live, hi, how you doing? And so first off, I'm just gonna I'm doing some introductions. So my co-host Lewis, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing good. So yeah, I'm Lewis, also known as LRFLEW. That's about all you need to know about me.
Okay, and then Jacob, how you doing, man?
Hey, I'm Jacob, otherwise known as Eggman, frequenter of Blind's chat, lover of Roller Coaster Tycoon and pinball and other things.
And our lovely guest host Jfryk, how you doing today, man?
Hey, great. Nice to be here. My name's Jfryk, and as you can see, I'm a startled cat. But I'm actually also a developer for the Battlefield series, so happy to be here.
It's good to have you, man. I had the pleasure of running into Jfryk at the beer garden, if you could call it that, at TwitchCon. And so sat down, talked for a little bit, and gave him an invite, and he said sure. So a couple months later, well, more than a couple months later, here we are. It's been like, what, 5 months since TwitchCon? It's time flies, man. Anyways,
It feels like yesterday.
yeah, no kidding. There's like snow on the ground outside and it's raining. It's not fun. But yeah, no. Welcome everybody. It's good to have you. And I'm just gonna drink my coffee and then I think we'll get started. So,
Alrighty.
ABZU. Once again, spoilers. Okay, now that that's out of the way, glad to have everybody. And let's just start this off pretty simply with, what do you guys think of ABZU? Does anybody want to go first? Because I have a theory on what ABZU's about, but I have a feeling somebody else might have a different theory. This game kind of lends itself to that.
Okay, so in ABZU, you play as a figure. You at the beginning, you're just a person with
Cat
not
ears.
really a human face, but you're swimming around in the ocean and kind of activating these temples and swimming with the fish and seeing all this different stuff. And
ABZU is like a beautiful art museum where you swim through like beautifully lit color palette bright area filled with fish, and I was genuinely amazed when I played it initially just how well the game just ran. I know that sounds weird, but like there is so much going on screen at any given time, and there's points when you're swimming through schools of fish and all you can see is just billions of fish flying past you. I don't know, it's one of those games where I feel like there'd be slowdown at some point, but it worked so well and played so well. It was
A game that I felt like performed really well until I decided to experiment and changed all the settings from high to ultra, and then I started noticing a couple of frame drops, but
that might
it
just
still
be your
performed
computer.
fairly well for being at max setting.
I didn't even touch the settings. Like I just went in and played from
You can't tell the difference. I couldn't visually tell the difference between high and ultra. So just leave it on high. It performs
a
amazing.
little bit crisper, I guess.
Maybe.
But, yeah, no. So the game's structured pretty simply. You spawn into an area, you do some basic puzzle solving, maybe find some collectibles and swim to the next area. Once you find the exit, you release fish, and slowly, I guess, regrow this ocean. From my point of view, ABZU tells the story about a ancient underwater like civilization that slowly destroyed themselves with their own greed and desire for power, using the power of the ocean, and you're going back to rebuild that. I also don't believe that you're one of those underwater people, for a reason that I'll get into later. But yeah, Eggman,
It's weird.
I feel like we interrupted you at one point.
oh no, I mean, I was just kind of trying to set a little bit of a perspective for people who are haven't played the game but don't care about spoilers and just what it's about.
Yeah. I need to stress that a lot of the more influential people on the developer of this game, which is Giant Squid, actually came from the team that worked on and designed a little game that you may have heard of called Journey. Now, Journey was, I think, the only game that I genuinely enjoyed on the PlayStation 3, with the exception of the Shadow of the Colossus remake. I'm not a
I
huge...
haven't played Journey, but I've wanted to play Journey.
I'm not a huge console person, and I'm not a huge fan of analog control, unless it's a very specific type of game, which is part of the reason I don't like consoles. But that game just worked. There was something about it. It felt incredibly natural, and I think ABZU basically does that again, at least from a gameplay perspective. It feels extremely natural. It feels the way you'd expect it to. Does that feel weird, sound weird almost? Like you're swimming underwater.
Totally agree with that.
Yeah.
Like
I think actually a really good game to get into both Journey and ABZU is to just approach it from, like, I think the less you know, the better for both of the games. So again, stressing, if you haven't seen it, if you really don't care about spoilers, that's cool, but you really should check these out yourself for the first time. Like, coming in with no expectations and just wanting to unwind and relax in the worlds they create for you is a really good way to experience them, I think.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
I'm not going to go spoil Journey here, but like, you know.
Yeah. So before the show, Lewis and Blind were talking about how they want to go back and play the game again or recommend it to their parents, and I think that's like a great thing, because having only played the game once myself, I mean, like, I'm trying to prepare for the show, taking notes and doing some research, but if I would actually go back to play this game just to relax, the music in it is phenomenal. It's all very orchestral and choreographed very well with the environment and what you're doing. The transitions aren't abrupt at all, and the environment that you're in is just it's a joy to look at, honestly.
Yeah. I was gonna say that the publisher of the game is like 505 Games.
Yes.
Which, if I'm not mistaken, which I probably am, that was the same publisher as like Brothers, right?
Same publisher as Brothers, same publisher as Virginia, same publisher as a lot of games that we've done.
Right, because when I was listening to the music, particularly kind of the second time through, I was thinking this feels a lot like the music in Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons. That it felt that, that was something that Brothers did really well, and one of the things I did like about that game. And this game did a really good job of replicating that for me. These really kind of grand pieces to set the mood.
Yeah, it was really orchestral in this game, and Blind already brought up it was the same composer from Journey, which is Austin Wintory. I think he did a really great job with Journey, but with this game he was really able to have a lot of diversity, and like the music really progressed as you went throughout the game. He also did the music for Monaco, which I think he did a fantastic job on, kind of ragtime songs.
Yeah.
Never actually played Monaco.
Yeah. There was one thing I wanted to bring up. Sorry.
I was just going to say, it's very interesting that composer has such a range that they can do ragtime and also this like really epic kind of set dressing music, I guess.
I mean, I think talented composers, there's a point where you can just kind of do anything as long as you know the style that you're trying to write. But it is a very impressive soundtrack. Like, I've actually listened to I'm one of those fiends that'll go around and just listen to game soundtracks, and I've been listening to the ABZU soundtrack for a while before actually playing ABZU. And like I listen to the Fury soundtrack all the time. I've never actually touched that game, so like
that I can totally relate to that. I mean, I have my iTunes library, and yes, I use iTunes. I have my iTunes library just filled with video game soundtracks, and there are some that I love, but I've never played the game for. I think there was one where like it was like Alien Blobs from Outer Space or something like that. It has an incredible soundtrack, and I've never once launched the game. And I could definitely see that for this game. That this is something that I actually looked because I wanted to get the soundtrack, and I want to add it to my collection and just start listening to it. I haven't yet, but I plan on it after this at some point.
I've also been listening to the soundtrack from Virginia a whole bunch, but that's just because it's a good soundtrack. But anyways, so there is a point in this game where you swim through a temple, and I want to talk about this temple because I think it's very important to the world building of this game. Now, it's
Which temple? There's a couple of them.
the second one. It's the really long one where you have to light up the different lamps
I think that's the third one, but yes,
is
I
that
know
the
what you're
third
talking
one?
about.
Okay, it's the really, really big one. On every single wall, there is an image that is very crucial to the story. Okay. Now, I spent about 20 minutes in this area. There's a few images in there that I can't remember exactly what order the different paintings are, but there's a few pieces of imagery that I'd like to stress that I think are very important. The first piece of imagery that I'd like to stress that I think is very important is, first off, it's an underwater world, right? It's an underwater community, some sort of underwater society even. Now, if you look closely at the creatures that are depicted, like the humanoid creatures, they are similar to you, but not the same. They have very different features. Their faces look different. They have different looking feet. Their hands are bigger. They're very
Clothes are different.
They're definitely different thing. They're not what you are, which is made obvious later down the line when you get zapped. But anyways, but that's actually given away, like what happens later in the game. For those of you who don't know, later in the game, spoilers once again, you get zapped by a giant inverted pyramid and lose your skin essentially, and you find out that you're a robot.
Well, to be fair, you kind of realize that a little bit earlier, because right before you get there, you go through this one room and you activate a console.
Yeah.
And it shows the little kind of turret followy thingy looking things. I don't know what you call them.
The Wheatleys.
Your buddies.
Yeah, the buddies. Let's just call them the buddies. They show the buddies, and they show they have this kind of energy orb in it, and then they show the inverted pyramids, and they show that has the energy orb in it, and then they show you, and they show that you have the energy orb.
The little buddies that swim around, they actually provide a service. If you spam the little communication button a whole bunch, they'll actually point you in the right direction. But yeah,
do they do that now?
Yeah, no, they'll go bleep, 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 and then they go swimming off and go bleep, 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 and then turn around and swim that way, and then like turn around and like yell at you, and then come back.
That does make sense. I do know you need it to get past certain areas because they block off walls.
But yeah, if you yell at them, they'll tell you which direction to go. They're quite handy. Eggman, you were gonna say something? Sorry.
I guess I didn't know that they did that either, but the way that I thought of them was as the Wheatleys of this game, and we find out that the antagonist of this game is an inverted pyramid with an eye in it, very similar to GLaDOS. That's like the first thing I thought of when I saw it.
Underwater Wheatley.
Yeah.
That's terrifying.
Yeah.
That's not a civilization I want to live in. But
I think to talk about the synopsis a little bit, I want to bring up something that I actually still not sure about, because there kind of are two different energy sources in the game that seem to be related, if not identical. There are the orbs, which one of the main goals you do is there are these kind of 5 spires in the game. You have to go and put a little bit of your energy orb into them to bring out the animals.
What that energy orb is explained in that temple I was referring to.
True, but there's also the water, which is also shown in that as
thing.
well. That they are kind of the same thing, but they're depicted slightly differently.
It seems like the orbs were sort of condensed power. Like it seemed like they were taking the heavy water, if you want to call it that, and were condensing it down and forming the orb, and that's what they used to power a lot of their civilization. It seems like
the paintings in that the paintings in that temple show images of the underwater society using these red jars, taking the heavy water, I guess, or like power the energy out of the where the spires are, and then using it to power their civilization essentially, and then pouring it back into the ocean. And then a little bit later you see a depiction of your character, except instead of using the jar, your character is just holding the same energy water in the orb, And if you actually notice the inside of the pyramid on your character's chest, which is very obvious in the painting, not so obvious like when you're actually like panning the camera around, but on the painting it's very obvious. The inverted pyramid on your chest is the same color, the exact same color as the jars. So essentially, the way I see it is your character is actually like able to carry this energy in a very, very compressed format, from place to place. That's the way I see it. I might be wrong there, but that's the way I see it.
I want to bring up real quick because we're having trouble describing what the water stuff is. They are calling it kind of heavy water. I think that water is actually what the game is titled after. I think that is ABZU. And that's because when I ended up trying to look up some stuff about this game, I came across a Wikipedia page that was just called ABZU, without the accent mark. And just to quote kind of the first part of it, the ABZU was the name for the primeval sea below the void space of the underworld and the earth above. It may also refer to fresh water from underground aquifers that was given a religious fertilizing quality. Lakes, springs, rivers, wells, and other sources of fresh water were thought to draw their water from the ABZU. And so it's apparently this ancient Mesopotamian religion that they had this idea of this kind of fertilizing water that was below the earth that would come up. And that really does seem to match what this game represents this stuff as.
Because it is really weird visually. It's almost like seeing water underwater.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you complete a temple and release the sea creatures from that temple, you have a little cutscene where from the bottom of the spire that you enter to go in there, it like the water raises up and then the whole area around it comes to life. And that's kind of like the revitalizing the sea part of the game.
The way I interpreted that was when we saw all those images of them taking this ABZU, let's call it ABZU, out of the, below the ocean. When Blind mentioned that they were dumping it back into the ocean later, I actually thought that that was some kind of well or reservoir where they were like storing it.
Oh, really?
So my theory was that these areas were dead because they had taken, like, drilled up all the ABZU out of those areas, and our robot, through a change of consciousness or whatever, the character we were controlling was going back, and you saw her take the energy out of his or her chest and put it back into it, and that's what revitalized the area. So to me, it felt like they had drilled too deep, and the land had started to die, and now our character was starting to bring the life back to these areas.
In those areas, if you swim down, I'm like in two minds as to whether or not they drilled too deep and just exhausted the resources, or if something else happened. Because when you swim down in those areas by the wells, there's like damaged machinery everywhere, and like pollution, and like basically a broken crane like structure thing around the base of all of these wells, as I guess we're calling them, before you fill it up. And it's almost like when you fill it up, it's blocking off all that crap, I guess, for lack of a better term, down below. So I'm kind of in two minds as to whether or not they just destroyed themselves society-wise, or if they ran out of energy. I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, that's true. That architecture doesn't match at all with the other architecture, and like you said, you can only see it before you raise the water. That's one area where I don't really have any theories about that. It seems like it's completely separate from the tiled architectural temples that we see too.
It's almost like maybe a previous civilization to them, even. I don't know. I don't think this game takes place on Earth, so I'm not gonna go claiming that it's humanity before.
It's interesting that, Blind, you brought up I think you used the word culture. Because there is some myths associated with ABZU, the topic that Lewis brought up. There is this is all ancient Sumerian mythology. Mm-hmm. There's a goddess called Inanna who wanted to steal the Mez. It's M-E, but it's pronounced Meh. And the Mez are the, what does it say specifically? The keywords and patterns that govern the universe. They were kept by another goddess called Enki, who's the goddess of culture in ancient Sumeria. And so in this myth that I found, Inanna wants to steal them from Enki. And so I'll read this. This is also off of a Wikipedia page from under the Inanna entry.
A lot of wiki searching in this show.
Yeah.
Hey, it's I think it's useful to kind of give us some perspective. But it says, in the myth, Inanna travels from her own city of Uruk to Enki's city, the capital of Eridu, which is where ABZU is, and she visits his temple. Inanna is greeted by Enki's Sukal, Ismid, who offers her food and drink. Inanna starts a drinking competition with Enki. Then once she has gotten Enki thoroughly intoxicated, Inanna cunningly persuades Enki into giving her the mez using clever rhetoric. Inanna flees Eridu in the boat of heaven, taking the mez back to Uruk. And so this could be like the interpretation of us revitalizing this temple could be that we are this vessel to restore the mez back to these temples where they were stolen, if we're going with the ancient Sumerian mythology interpretation.
I do think that this game was based off of ancient Sumerian mythology. I'd also noticed it because after I played the game the second time, I actually did some Google searching because I really wasn't sure what to make of it. And I found a couple interpretations, but I also found a Reddit post where there's a hidden part of one of the levels where you can go and there's kind of this wall painting of a person holding up kind of 3 birds or whatever. And they were kind of asking you, what do you think this is? And someone brought up that there does appear to be another Sumerian myth that relates to that. So a lot of what I'm seeing seems to be pointing towards kind of Samaritan, ancient, Mesopotamian mythology.
I'll admit I didn't do a lot of Google searching this time. Sometimes I do more, sometimes I do less. This time I basically just looked up the definition of ABZU, in which I don't think I landed on even the same conclusion as you two. So
it's actually interesting because before I played the game, and this is how I kind of got the references to these other myths, otherwise I might not have known where to look, but I was reading a book by Neil Stevenson called Snow Crash, and he's doing some research into ancient languages, and some scholars believe in our world that ancient Sumerian is one of the base languages of the world. It's one of the very earliest languages that we know to exist, and the mez in this myth can be kind of correlated with language in some way, the keys to the universe or patterns to the universe, as it were.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't really have much more to say about that myth, but that's really neat, in all honesty.
I mean, I think there's a heavy culture component in this game, which is why I think it's an important thing to bring up, because of the drawings on the temple walls and everything.
Speaking of the drawings, I'm curious if you guys thought that the Nautilus, what significance the Nautilus had, because obviously the great white shark was, a god or whatever, or something really high up for these people. Yeah. But in a few of the paintings, they actually had the Nautilus above the shark, and obviously you're collecting them as a bonus as you go through the game. Do you guys have any idea about the significance of that?
I paid more attention to the shark, to be honest, because the symbolism of the shark, I think just looking at the shark, at least, it seemed like they held it up as a protector of the sea, or a guardian, I guess, maybe, which is, to me, made a little bit more clear at the end of the game when it crashes into the thing at the end, but well, not quite the end, but close to the end. Yeah, I have no idea. No, almost.
I would say that if I had to make a guess as to why the Nautilus features so heavily, it's because the basis of this whole ABZU thing is some of the earliest forms of civilization that we've discovered on Earth, and the Nautilus has very close roots to the earliest forms of life on Earth, like trilobites and Jurassic era type creatures, basically. But that could be something.
It's the fact that it's been around for so long. Go on, Jfryk?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that actually brings up an interesting point in the game, which is after your character gets electrocuted. Well, actually, maybe we want to talk about that for a bit, where it's finally revealed who your character really is. But that's a big transition point in the game where before then we had kind of been, there's a few things. We were going deeper in the sea, it felt like a bit, especially after we crossed that point. And then also it felt like the seasons were sort of changing as much as you can have seasons change, underwater. And I think the music actually followed that a lot. I kind of got like a Vivaldi's Four Seasons feel out of it.
Oh, definitely.
And then you sort of almost have an afterlife where you see these creatures that have gone extinct after you cross that point.
Yeah.
I thought that was one of the really cool parts of the game.
In my
I was
mind,
gonna-
you actually die at that point in my mind, but
I was going to say that, Blind had mentioned that he wasn't sure that this even takes place on Earth, but it has Earth creatures. And, I didn't really think of it as seasons. So it wasn't so much a temporal shift as it was a environmental shift. Like you start kind of at surface level and you see all the fish that are there, and then you go to more kind of mid-sea and you see the fish there, and then you go to a deep part of the ocean, and then you have, the part with all the extinct fish.
I don't think it's seasons necessarily, but I think it's maybe because I hadn't thought about it as seasons until Jfryk just mentioned that, but perhaps they're trying to invoke the feeling of being above water or just being within a world that we would recognize by changing the color palette. And as you go deeper, things get darker. It's I think seasons is just a really easy way of describing a changing color palette. And if you think about the color palette, it starts off very green. The first area that you're in is extremely green. There's a lot of green plant life, and then it goes to be kind of browny orange, and then it goes to darker colors, and then it comes back around, I think is kind of what Jfryk's trying to say. Just color palette wise in my head, running back through the game.
It's a little bit stronger than that, but I'm really excited that you guys want to play through the game at some point again, because I think if you look at it in this way, you might appreciate a few of the areas a little differently. Because you're right, it starts out in the green area. The next area is green with like a tint of red. And then when you enter the third area, which I'm calling in my theory the fall area, you'll see it's very vibrantly orange and red.
Yeah.
And then actually the first scene you see when you enter the area after that has these particles moving through the water, and the light is catching them, and they're very white, and it's almost like the snow of underwater snow. So I'm not saying it's seasons quite literally, but almost like the game, through showing you going deeper and deeper, is showing sort of the seasons of the ocean.
I did notice that they seem to be different ecosystems. That was the word I wanted to get out, ecosystems.
Yeah, I did notice that as you were transitioning through the different areas, specifically right before the loading screens, you go through the triangular gates with the eye, and those are always lit up in a very solid color. And I think that actually matches what Jfryk was mentioning, the color palette seasons of each area.
Like changing.
Yeah.
I just wanted to mention this is kind of a little bit off topic, but just in response to the game's design and the way I feel about it personally, like just the look of it. I recall referring to Inside as the literally perfect for its style. I think this game is kind of on level with that. Like, stylistically, visually, and look, and the way it plays, I think it's damn close to a perfect game. Just in that respect, you know what I mean?
It's an artistic package.
Yes.
Kind of.
Yeah. As a piece of art, as the way it plays, the way it controls, the way it moves, the way it flows, it's damn close to perfect. And that is really rare.
Sorry.
Go on.
Sorry, I thought you kind of finished that thought, but
I was just gushing. Go ahead.
I was thinking that one of the things I really like that I don't think anyone has mentioned yet is that when we're talking about how the sharks definitely seem to be important to the culture, there are a number of shark statues you can find. And when you go up to them, you can meditate on them. And when you meditate, you basically go around and you look at all the different fish, and it has a little thing that says what the type of fish is. And it's definitely that I thought was actually a really interesting part of the game because it kind of helped point out that it was, a very relaxing experience. You could basically just sit there and watch it the entire time. And I think,
Life Size Aquarium mode.
It's the world's best screensaver.
yeah,
Like I want
Yeah.
that. I want someone at the ABZU team to take that technology and make like a $3 screensaver. I would buy that, and that would be my screensaver. It would just load up ABZU and just run that.
So, yeah, like another cool feature that we haven't mentioned is that you can actually, for the larger fish or aquatic creatures, you can actually ride them. You press shift and you just kind of like hang on to them. And I actually didn't realize until the end of the game that you can actually control what direction they go in. But otherwise, they
You can make them shoot out of the water, dude.
Yeah.
And
Also,
watch
left trigger. Use left trigger to do it
the
if you're playing it with an actual controller.
But once I found that first meditation point, I was like, wow, this is really cool. Like, there's so much detail that they put into all the different fish, and like the 5-striped snapper has the 5 stripes on it, and you can see it. And so I always sought those out so I could figure out what kind of new fish there were. There's also little points that you can interact with that allow you to free new kinds of fish into the environment, and you can learn about them too. Well, not learn about them, but learn what their names are at least.
And
Mhm.
that's also a completion thing. When you go to the main menu, you can actually load up those individual meditation points. There's a option on the main menu that's just meditate, and you can just select whichever one you found before in the game while playing through it, and go straight there, and then pop back up to the main menu and hop from spot to spot. So if you ever just want to meditate, I guess you can just go select that from the main menu and do that, which is neat. I can't believe that we didn't mention that before. Whoops. Yeah, no. In my opinion, that this game's kind of masterful in its design, and it's definitely a pleasure to play. But I kind of want to mention what happens when you go deep down, because you get to a point where you meet the whales, and you start swimming down. You see orcas, you see various different types of whales, and you find a blue whale. And you see this blue whale, and it looks like you're swimming next to it, and it's this beautiful, huge whale, and you can see a couple of them, and you're swimming down to I guess into a great trench in the ocean. You're slowly going down, and you're going down, and you're going down, and then it comes next to you, and you're the size of its eyeball. I think that moment was actually.
It tries to eat you at one point, I thought.
No, it doesn't. It's just swimming next to you.
Yeah, it does kind of like a fake out where it looks like it's going to consume you, but it's just eating like kelp or
It's
algae
eating-
in front of you or something.
They
It's
eat
hard to get a
krill.
sense of perspective for how big it is.
Yeah.
I think this segment in the game was completely influenced by the creative director for this game. I don't have his name up right now, but Blind, you mentioned earlier, again, some similarities with Journey. He was the art director on Journey,
Yeah.
and he was now the creative director on this game, so he had more of an influence on the design of it as well. And that really felt similar to one of those like long surfing segments you'd have in Journey, where it's just like sit back, chill out, just take all this in right now.
I did a little bit of wiki search before I played this game, because I was told it had some influence from Journey, and if I recall correctly, it's like 3 or 4 people from the team, like the head guys on ABZU, also worked on Journey. It was as you said earlier, the composer, designer, somebody on gameplay, and then an art person.
Yeah, it was the art director, and he went on to be creative director. So that's both the art and the design of the game.
Yeah, so which is neat. I'm terrible with names, so I wouldn't remember any of those off the top of my head. I can find the Wikipedia page if you want, but it's that moment with the blue whales, I think, is actually kind of incredible, and one of my favorite moments in that entire game. And I just think it's amazing. And then you get down below, and then the game takes a very quick tonal shift, because up until now, with the exception of something that we didn't mention earlier, but when you first find your little robot buddy, which is just a little dude down on like a little tiny thing on the ground that you pick up, and he swims around with you, and as I mentioned earlier, he'll point you in the right direction. He also helps you get through things that essentially have like almost spider webs. I guess it's seaweed blocking like in those old RPGs where you'd have to hack through a piece of seaweed or something to get through a door. Seems like a similar thing, except with the you have to use your little robot buddy to get through it. You're swimming into this open area, and a shark comes by and goes flonk, and eats your
one.
little dude and swims off. And it's kind of traumatizing. At least for me, it was.
It's so sad.
I was like, what? Stupid.
As long as we're sorry, you kind of went on a tangent, Blind, but you can finish what you were originally talking about.
I was gonna say I think we should talk about the inverted pyramids down underwater.
Okay.
Because in the painting, in that back to that temple, the really big one, there's a painting of the giant inverted pyramid. Now, this is the first one with you on it, if I remember correctly. It's either that or the second one. I think you might show up in one of the earlier ones where they're not constructing you, but like showing you next to them. Now there's two paintings in this thing in this temple that are very important to this, in my opinion. The first one is the giant inverted pyramid. Now, first off, you have the same pyramid on your chest, okay? And earlier I mentioned that when they were carrying the energy around, they were using the red jars, which is the same color as the pyramid on your chest. Those giant triangle things that you swim through, those giant things are generators. They are storage units. They are power sources, essentially, that harvest the Earth's or the ocean's energy to power the colony. And in my opinion, you don't control them, but you can take power from them and move them around, I think. From that painting. But then it's very important because you spin around, and if you look at not the ceiling, but there's another painting like just above the entrance, the archway that you swim under, where you look up and you see the spire, the things that you're repowering with the giant coral sticking out of the top of it, exploding and shattering.
Mm-hmm.
And you see that right after you see the big power source. So I'm wondering, and I'm not sure, but I'm wondering if these giant inverted pyramids have any correlation with destroying the power sources. So, and then I just want to talk about what we think those things are exactly. That's just my theory.
Well, functionally, they act as mines, right? As you get closer to them, they kind of pulse more quickly, and eventually they'll shoot out a ray of energy and just
The small ones do.
Yeah. But like it's not like they go away once you activate them either, and it doesn't ever kill you, which I thought was a little bit weird. But since we learned later that you're a robot that is essentially powered by the same thing that these are, it makes a little bit more sense. But,
well, the shark also doesn't get killed when it gets zapped and crushed by one.
Nothing seems to. Really. Like, you can swim up next to them and they go and then they zap you and then you swim away. And, like, if you watch the fish, there are some fish down in that area, like some deep-sea fish. If they swim past them, it'll go and they won't die. They'll just keep swimming along. It's just kind of like a defense mechanism, I guess? Maybe? I don't know. But there is some light puzzle solving in this game, and the puzzle for that area when you get down below the water is to shut them down. You find a cable, you have to follow the cable, and you basically deactivate them so you can move along. And then the climax of this game is actually destroying the big one, like the I guess the main power source.
Yeah, and like the question here, like you brought up earlier, is did you actually die there? Was our character actually revitalized, or is it all a dream after that point?
Two things happen, right? At the end, you glow a whole bunch. Well, actually, that's not totally true. You destroy you with the help of your shark buddy, destroy the main giant power source inverted pyramid thing. And then you begin to glow. And you swim a hell of a lot faster. Now maybe you just took all the power from this thing? So perhaps you just, in the act of destroying it, got all the power it had stored up? Or you died and you're hallucinating. One of the two.
Well, you are a robot, so it's hard to tell if you're hallucinating. But the way I understood it was actually it's sort of a reciprocal thing. The what you're talking about happens at like the very end. So the idea is that the towering thing that we see, there's one part I think after the second, or it might be part of the third one, where you see that there are the four spires, which have each of the different creatures related: the manta ray, the whale, that whatever type of shark, and the giant squid. And then there was the center one, the big one, which had the great white as its center. And so you actually go through and reactivate each of the four spires, and then you go through the whole thing, and you get zapped and everything, and you finally go back to the big center one, and you revitalize the great white, which comes back. And then, from what I understood, the great white, which you basically just gave all this energy to, reciprocates and gives you energy back, which heals your kind of skin suit and gives you that extra speed. Because at the very end of the game, when you're just swimming around during the credits, you no longer have that speed anymore.
Yeah.
So I understood it as kind of being a temporary, thank you, I'm reciprocating the action.
Yeah, I guess that would like definitely support the theory that you're not dead. And remove my darkness from everything.
I mean, you're a robot, so you can get, regenerated or something, right?
Yeah, right. You can get rebooted.
So I'm curious if you guys ever went up to the surface much during this game.
I did constantly, actually.
Yeah?
Not much.
So what were those strange black objects in the sky?
Weren't they more of those pyramids?
There is a theory that if you look at them and in the right way, they kind of look like spaceships.
Oh, really?
There's a theory that this maybe third civilization that was leaving those ruins you were talking about around the revitalization areas was actually sending, maybe that was the evolution of the people who had, evolved on the planet and had gone off into space, that they were sending these robot versions of themselves back to harvest more of this energy. But you got knocked out or your programming got reset or something, and when you're supposed to be going on this mission to take more energy off for the species, you actually become, you start to enjoy the species and you have a bit greater appreciation for the planet and this journey with the shark, and you decide to bring it back. So you were actually sent for a different purpose, but you decided to help revitalize the ecosystem instead.
I mean, that's not something I'd even thought about, but that's neat.
I actually didn't see the things in the sky, but if they are there, I like that as an interpretation, because certainly the things that we see, the inverted pyramids, are very different than everything else, and I think it's highly probable that they could be alien.
Well, I think there's a few different ways you could go with that, right? It could either be, well, the inverted pyramids are the pinnacle of this civilization's technology. You could go that route, or you could be like, these guys, like, we could go the ancient aliens route, where, well, this race was here on this planet, and then this other race came and gave them the giant inverted pyramids. And
yeah, I guess I kind of minced my words there. I meant more like alien as in a civilization that is no longer, like, they went up into space and like they're different than our civilization, assuming that it's takes place on Earth, right? So yeah, so not necessarily that they came down to Earth and then started harvesting, but like Jfryk was saying, they could have, evolved and then come back to harvest more energy. I hope I'm not putting words in your mouth.
I think
something like that. Just an interesting idea. I'm not saying I believe in it, but there's a lot of cool theories you can generate from this game.
Yeah, no, I hadn't thought about it that way. I basically, everything that I got story-wise for this game, well, the main reason, everything I got story-wise from this game was basically from the temple paintings. That's where I kind of got everything. And then there's the one thing that I was staring at when I would go above water was there's a mountain above water that you can kind of clearly see at points in the game, and it slowly gets closer as you go through the game and then disappears altogether. My thought is that's the landmass above water at the end part of the game where you're super powered up and you can fly super high, and you can see real, like, when you're super powered up after destroying the end game inverted pyramid. That's where I think you are. It's like a journey from here to there, and you can actually kind of like see your end point from the beginning of the game if you look. That's my thought.
Yeah, that also had a lot of similarities to the end of both Journey and Inside.
Well, Journey, you get what? You power up your scarf basically, and then you can fly pretty much.
Yep.
Yeah.
Get your uber power moment.
That's not exactly a spoiler for Journey. You can jump really high. Ooh. And then Inside, which we've talked about before on this show, and I think we've all played here. You turn into the blob thing. Spoilers, if you didn't know.
It's close to the end.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a kind of a common thing in game design to throw something different at you at the very end to change it up, to give the game a climax, to give it a different feel, to make you feel like you've achieved something, to make something appear to have changed. So I think that's just common threads stretching together. So I'm curious, does anybody have anything here they'd want to bring up?
I was going to ask everybody, Blind, you mentioned this a little bit, but I was just going to ask everybody what their favorite moment in the game was. My favorite moment was the moment, I guess, the moment where you get the shark comes back, because the shark is kind of present throughout the entire game, and you're not really sure whether it's friendly or unfriendly, and then eventually you see it destroy or attempt to destroy the main power source, the main inverted pyramid, and it dies, and you get you lose your skin, and you're like, oh man, this is kind of tragic, because I don't know, I thought it was a very important figure, and then it comes back, and I was like, yes! And then we got to go destroy all the inverted triangles.
Me and my shark buddy are going to go destroy the big bad.
Yeah. So did you guys have like a specific moment that stands out to you?
The whole thing.
It's just one perfect package.
Yeah, I feel like no part of it in isolation would match anywhere near the product as a whole.
I think that's
I think
the
there
nicest
are,
thing you've ever seen
there are a
in
lot
a
of-
game.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
There are a lot of touching moments throughout the game. I think you could mention there's, jumping through the end of the jet stream with the dolphins, or just riding a dolphin and have it jump out of the water. Plenty of touching moments, but I have to say my favorite moment was just obliterating that minefield that you had to go through, that giant room with all the mines. And they made it like 10 times larger for that moment, and that was definitely my favorite moment.
Yeah.
I think I'm kind of in the same boat as Lewis, where it's just the whole thing's just damn perfect. But if I had to pick one specific moment in the game, I've already brought it up, and that's where you're the size of the great blue whale's eyeball. Like, wow, I'm small. Like that, like just that moment of I'm swimming down and oh wow, there's this whale, and I was looking at that and going, I'm pretty sure those are bigger. Like, is it just really far? Oh, okay. Don't eat me, man. I thought that we were gonna have like a Jonah moment. Like I thought I was gonna get eaten, and then man, that part of the game was stressful.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh god, get me away from this thing, it's so big.
So I'd also like to ask Jfryk, since you're in the game development industry, and I don't know exactly what you do, but is there anything about the game's design itself that you thought was exceptional or maybe not so great?
Yeah, sure. I'm gonna start with the exceptional because that's easier. It's not my department at all, but the fish swarms that they did for this game were pretty incredible. I mean, there had to be several thousand fish in those swarms of fish that you have, and you get this kind of like torus ring effect going with them, and they're all swarming around you. And I was just dumbfounded as to how they actually pulled that off. I'm guessing they used Unreal Engine. I'm guessing they used some kind of visual effect formula to get that to go, because I can't imagine that those were all, obviously they weren't AI. They had some kind of like swarm mentality with them. So that had to be the most impressive thing for me in this game. I don't know.
I wouldn't be surprised if they used a particle effect to achieve that they basically simulated a bunch of particles and then used those as the objects.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I'm saying. So in Unreal, you can, use a lot of algorithms to create different effects, and I'm guessing they had some kind of torus effect with some kind of swarming variant on it. But like the way you could disturb the fish, and they would, get disturbed by you, but then try and reroute themselves back into the swarm was incredibly impressive.
There's one moment when you can see I can't remember what type of fish they are. I think they're like some predatory fish swimming around the outside. They're like smaller sharks, I think, swimming around the outside, and then there's like this huge school of fish in kind of an open area in front of one of the big inverted pyramids with like where the water is very deep, and you can like sit inside of like straight up inside of this school of fish and see nothing in your screen except for fish, and it's nuts.
Yeah, you could just bask in it for a while. But as far as like the least impressive thing, this is like a small nitpick, but there's so much great animation in this game for the squids, and they have really cool AI. But there was one small octopus that when you got close to it, it would like shrivel up into some shell it was hiding in, and it was the worst animation I've ever seen. It was the contrast between the amazing animation versus that really made it stand out. So kudos to the design team. They did, the whole development team, really awesome job on this game.
Yeah. I did actually kind of want to reiterate what you were talking about with the fish, that it really did impress me. I think there was one point when I was playing and I was reminded of one of the E3 like Call of Duty. I forget what game it even was. I think it's the one with the dog. And they're talking about the whole thing with like the big fish AI. It's like clearly they spent millions of dollars, working on this whole fish stuff. And this game did it beautifully for obviously a fraction of the production cost. And I mean, it's not perfect. If you look closely, you can see fish clip into each other. I had an issue where I had a manta ray swim directly into another manta ray as I was riding in.
Just like that?
Phase them. Yeah, and they just phase through each other.
Oh.
Yeah,
but, if you're not looking for it, it really does work. It doesn't ever really break that illusion for
this game in motion visually looks masterful to me.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and if I have a few nits to pick, one is I noticed there's a few chain things you have to activate 2 chains to open the gate to get to the temple, and the chain coil is the chain figure on there is smaller than the chain that comes out, which is annoyed me slightly. And then I should have been playing on a controller because the keyboard controls were not very intuitive for me. I would end up like holding down W and then just swimming in a loop a lot of the time, because it's like your instinct for a lot of these types of games is to W to go forward, but in here it's right click to go forward.
Yeah, play with a controller. You'll do yourself a huge favor.
Yeah.
If I recall correctly, isn't this one of those games that has like a disclaimer on the Steam page that says you should probably play this with a controller?
Yep, has that.
Just like
you didn't have a problem with the chains just being infinitely long and they could keep on coiling. And
the issue I had is the chains go in the wrong direction. Coiling it should go up that way. It should change to go that way instead of coming out and like pushing it through all of the loops. Like that's not really how physics.
I did think the chains were a little odd. If I were to nitpick anything about this game, it's just the way the chains moved. I agree with Lewis. They moved really weird. It was like what?
Speaking.
It's fine.
Speaking briefly about messing up on the controls, that was one thing where I played on controller also, but there were some moments where you're trying to descend directly down and the camera's not quite pointing down yet, so you're kind of flailing around a bit. But even when you were messing up with the controls, your character still looked really graceful. So it's like, oh yeah, I meant to do that. So it kind of alleviates some of the frustration from underwater controls. But that was really well done.
Whenever I would see an open spot in the water, I would just go for it, fly into the sky.
Yeah.
That was just.
I was gonna say that the controls are actually surprisingly unintuitive in the sense that, like, so you have the controller here, and in general, this controlled your pitch. So this was to pitch up and pitch down, and this is your yaw. So you kind of turn left, turn right, and then it's like right trigger to swim forward. But that turning has nothing to do with the camera, which you can control with this one. And so you can like turn the camera around and then try to swim forward, and you'll go in the direction the player's face, the character's facing, not the direction the camera is facing, which is actually kind of unintuitive for this kind of game.
As somebody who likes to take selfies in video games and take a lot of screenshots, I liked that. Because I could pan the camera around and then keep swimming. And like, look at what's behind me. Also,
Yeah, I'm actually curious. Did you think that was frustrating, or did you just find it confusing? Because I also found it confusing, but it didn't frustrate me. I just got used to it, and it was like, oh, look, I made some cool flip accidentally. Cool.
Yeah. I mean, that wasn't the part I'd consider frustrating. Like, yeah, that's a little bit confusing, but it never really got in the way. What got in the way is the fact that if you push up in your swimming, if you push up, you'll, start kind of diving down. I have it inverted. So you start diving down, but then you'll loop around and you just start swimming the other way. Like it's really hard to swim straight up or straight down because you have to kind of balance based on what the game's trying to do.
Do you feel that took away from the game in any way?
Not really. It was just a point of frustration, though. There's only a few times where you really need to swim straight up or straight down anyways.
Because I'm going to harken back to Journey again. Journey is one of those games where it doesn't really... There is a little bit of platforming, because Journey is like... If you've never played Journey, it takes place in a giant desert with large stone columns, and you almost feel like you're swimming through the desert. And there, as I said, there's no precision platforming, there's no real enemies, there's something that you need to fight. But the game just kind of has a flow to it. And I think that even though like I didn't have any problems with the camera controls. I need to make that completely clear. I had zero problems with the control in this game. It just kind of felt perfect to me. It felt like swimming. Which is weirdly impressive. Considering you're in a 3D space, I think it's almost impossible with this control style to not have some confusing elements, because unless you're like go full on Descent with it, it's really hard to do 6 Degrees of Freedom and make it simple. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
The fact that they keep you upright the entire time, there is going to be points where your character just kind of resets, I guess, and goes, okay, I need to be flat again. The camera's not going to flip at any point, So, I don't know. The controls to me just didn't cause any problems, really, but I didn't even touch the keyboard controls. So, yeah. I think games like this should just be left on controller, to be fair. But if you don't know a controller, I'm sure it's playable with did you finish it with mouse and keyboard, Eggman?
I did. Actually, one of the points that who was saying this? Lewis, you were saying that it's confusing that you can keep going in the direction you always go in the direction that your character is facing, even if you change the camera. It was much easier with computer because I would just aim myself in the right direction and then I could just move the mouse, and it wasn't. You can be a little bit more quick with your movements or accurate, and still be able to kind of look around as you're swimming towards someplace, which I found useful.
Makes sense.
I'd like to skip back over the ending again real quick, and that's something that we haven't mentioned yet, which is when you destroy the inverted pyramid and it crashes down and does its thing, you actually see a coral reef regrowing on it. There's like kind of almost a time-lapsed moment where, or maybe that's just the way this world works, I guess, because of the wells underwater. You see like these corals growing out of this like power source pyramid. Or machine thing. Yeah, pyramid. It, to me, when I saw that, I looked at that and I went, oh, they're talking about us. I have this huge feeling that this entire game is just kind of an allegory for our world, but I think it's really interesting because of that scene, because, global warming, climate change and us slowly destroying our planet. I think it's an interesting story because of that moment right there, where it's kind of saying like, you know, it's never too late to fix a problem, and things will fix themselves. I think it's, to me, made all of ABZU into almost a cautionary tale, or an interesting allegory to us, and like where we are in the world and what's happening, and but at the same time just kind of like patting you on the shoulder and saying, you know, it's okay, we can fix this. Does that make sense at all?
Yeah, I didn't get that out of it, but I can see that you can draw that correlation. I mean, it's fine.
What correlation?
Yeah, I thought it definitely had some overtones of that. I think some of that at least was intentional, and also like you know, shipwrecks and that kind of thing can end up making sort of the best coral reefs. So that was maybe a bit of a showing that off, where the machinery that had done so much harm was going to do good in the future.
Yeah. No, I just think that whole moment was really interesting, and it kind of like set in stone in my mind that, okay, yeah, they're talking about us, but I think it's really interesting the way that they, especially afterwards when you see all the extinct creatures, and when you gain all of that power and you can shoot really far out of the water, it's like, not only can you, this is allegorically, this is how I interpret this whole portion of the game. Not only can we survive and return back to our former glory, but we can be better than we were before, if that makes sense. So to me, that whole part of the game allegorically was just really interesting. So, which to me was actually kind of powerful. I don't know. As someone who really likes nature, I grew up at Scouts. You know, I did a lot of hiking. I was outside a whole bunch. The whole moment to me was just really, really cool. That, and just getting to exist in this underwater world for a little bit, and the fact that everything is just kind of almost in harmony. It's just it's gorgeous. And you know what? Now I just want to sit down and watch Planet Earth.
Have you guys seen Planet Earth 2? Oh, it's so good.
I listened to the soundtrack while playing City Skylines. But no, I haven't.
I should just like turn that on as background noise on Netflix or something. It's something that I always think is really cool.
Planet Earth is awesome. It's great. So, thank you for watching this episode of the Storymode podcast, talking about Planet Earth, the video game. Yeah. I would totally play a Planet Earth video game.
Was this not like a Planet Earth video game Ocean Edition?
It basically was, right?
Wait,
I mean, that's kind of my final synopsis of the game, is that, like, you know, even if we ignore kind of the story elements and just talk about the visuals and the gameplay, I think it's worth it just because it's a great experience that, you know, should totally go out and buy it. I mean, maybe not worth it at the full price, but I don't think anything is, but just, you know, play it.
Well, now I want the David Attenborough redub version where I can get when I get to the end of the game.
Can we get like a director's cut, which is just like all of the story stuff taken out and all of the dark stuff taken out, and it's just like a lovely, like, maybe just like a 30-minute long game where you go through all of the brightly nicely lit areas, and then it's just like the lovely commentary. Every time you find a different type of fish, just meditating with like that voice. I just want that now.
Well, that's what the whole, like, you finish the game and you have all the meditation areas. You can just go do that, right?
Pretty much, but there's no commentary.
You can add your own commentary. Here we see the giant squid run around its natural habitat.
Okay, now that I'm severely disturbed, is there anything else we want to touch on?
I think I'm good.
I think we've hit everything pretty much. It's got a lot deeper into mythology than I was expecting.
That sounds like the game for you.
Yeah. Jfryk, did you have anything you wanted to mention?
No, I think we touched on everything. It's a really fun game.
Yeah.
Check it out.
So now that we're at the end, I guess, I think we're wrapping up. If there's random hysterical laughter, I think my girlfriend just saw something really funny on her computer. She looks like she's dying. Like she's like all flushed red in the face and like cracking up and like covering her face, and now I think she's crying. Anyways, back on topic. Thank you to everybody, to all my hosts, you guys showing up, doing this. You know, Lewis has done this 14 times with me now. Eggman's been a returning frequent host now for a little while, and Jfryk. It's okay. Giggles. Jfryk, thank you very much for guest hosting on this little show. It's not much, but we try, and it's fun to put on once a month. So now I'm gonna start at the beginning with Lewis. Do you have anything you want to shout out, talk about, mention now that we're here?
Not really.
Not really. Go follow him on Twitter. He doesn't tweet. It's fine.
Yeah, or if you're gonna follow me somewhere, just I'm on Twitch, twitch.tv/LRFLEW. I'll stream one of these days.
At some point. Eggman, you have anything you want to shout out or mention?
Yeah, I mean, as long as I have this time, I did mention earlier that I'm reading a book by Neil Stevenson called Snow Crash, and it's one that I would recommend if you're looking for something to read. If I can sell it to you in quick summary, the opening scene has the main character delivering pizzas, but this takes place in the future, where if you are late in delivering your pizza, you have a time limit of 30 minutes. The customer has a legal right to kill you if you deliver it late. So
that would be nice.
So that's the opening scene there, and yeah. So I recommend that book. You can find. I don't stream very often, but you can follow me on Twitch if you'd like. Yeah.
Or just hang out in my channel and wait for weed music. Yeah. And Jfryk, do you have anything you want to shout out or mention before we head out here?
Well, first of all, you guys forgot to call out AGDQ.
Oh yeah,
I'm sure everybody knows.
I'm gonna host them afterwards. It's fine.
All right, perfect. There's a YouTuber that I watch a lot. His name's Keith Ballard. I'll link it, but I actually rewatched his ABZU playthrough because it had been a while since I finished the game, and he also had Journey, and I never played Journey, so I watched through his playthrough, and I enjoyed both of them a lot. And then I'm going to shout out a game called Orwell on Steam. I have nothing to do with the devs of this game. It's just a game that a friend recommended. It's really fun. It deals with sort of 1984 government surveillance stuff, and you're playing a part in it, and it's all through sort of text messages and browsers. So really fun game. Check it out.
Yeah, that game got nominated for a bunch of awards, and it came out like right before the end of the year, and it was like, I need to look at this thing, and then like missed it completely.
Yeah, it deserved them. Check it out. It's a fun game.
Okay. I'll take it. I think it's on my wish list actually, although I have like 90 games on my wish list, so that's not saying a huge lot. But anyways, if you're watching live on Twitch, you're watching my Twitch channel. My name's Greg. The internet calls me blind. We do this once a month. If you want to find out more information about this podcast, if you're in the chat right now, you can type in !podcast, or you can trip over and fall into our website, which is Project Storymode. .com, and you can follow the show on Twitter at Real Story Mode. Occasionally I'll tweet out old episodes, and it's a very quiet account, so it won't spam up your feed or anything, but if you follow it, you will get updates. Also, we have a Steam curator. I realize that Steam curators are totally 2 years ago and haven't been updated and nobody cares, but if you follow that, as you're browsing through Steam, if you see our little logo down at the bottom, you know that we've talked about that game. We've done, this is our 14th game, so, we're getting a pretty hefty list on there. And then you can hop in there, and there's links directly to our show episode. You can listen to the episode, and then, I don't know, play the game, listen to the episode, play the game, whatever works for you. But thank you very much. Seriously, this has been fun. And thank you to the lovely surprised cat, Jfryk, for guest hosting, and everybody else for showing up, and everybody who watched live. And if you found this on SoundCloud, I don't know how you did that, but good job. And if you found this on Google Play, I'm immensely surprised, because to my knowledge, we have 0 subscribers on Google Play, and iTunes keeps rejecting us. So, anyways, thank you very much for tuning in. And I think I'm going to stop rambling here, and I'm going to put this end slate image here. And,